What else are you doing to build cultures where people feel safe and empowered to bring their unique talents into everything that they do?
Well, I bring on my team because of their expertise, and I trust them, and I ask for their opinion. And when you do that, that helps build trust. That means they need to know that I trust them, and that I'm counting on them. Um, so if something doesn't go right, they're more willing to help, fix it, especially if it was their idea.
Whether you want more innovation more easily, you are feeling burnt out or overwhelmed, or you simply know that something isn't quite the way you know it can be, you are not alone. I hear the same from leaders every day. On Uncommon Leadership, we explore aligning personal fulfillment with business success, creating authentic teams, and cultivating the resilience, adaptability, and ease necessary to move beyond simply surviving today's challenges into thriving. I'm Michael Hunter with Uncommon Teams, and today we'll uncover fresh insights into what it means to lead in this crazy world today. Joining me is Todd Hanson. Todd is the founder and inventor of Compass Carts, the hitch hauler that is probably all over your social media. Todd melded his 2+ decades of leading at Wells Fargo, including facilitating discussions where people actually listened and participated, with a dream for a better way to pack backcountry adventures in and out. Through all that, he's learned a thing or two that's helped him build a lively, thriving company with raving fans. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you, Michael. Glad to be here.
When did you first recognize that integrating your whole self and integrating that into everything that you do might be a valuable approach?
Well, it goes back to my days, boy, early in my sales career. We've you have to be 100% dedicated. You got to be focused, um, and that was really. I mean, that would go back all the way back when I was first starting my sales careers. I think is when you would have to be fully engaged. If you're not, you easily get distracted. At least myself, I do anyway. It's easy for me to get distracted if I'm not paying attention or 100% focused. So for me, technology, I have to make sure I got some things turned off while I'm working because I can, I'm chasing the squirrel often, but yeah, it's hard. And leading classes, that was a hard part for me as well. I'm trying to keep attention when I'm training my team members, and they're no different than you and I in that they got to stay focused as well, and giving them time to not pay attention, focus on the things that's drawing their attention. I think was helpful there in their classes.
How did you know or determine that the right thing to do there was give them time to be distracted and then come back rather than force them to focus or something else?
Because when I tried to force them to focus, it didn't work. Most of our classes that I trained on was technology related. We were training systems, softwares, processes, some compliance within our trainings, and sometimes you just had to step back and give them time to absorb or respond to an email. And a lot of times these were commissioned salespeople in most cases, and they never want to miss a sale, so it's easy for them to get distracted. And if you gave them the time and said, "Hey, we're going to give you these number of breaks, and give you an opportunity to respond," it really let them ease their mind, and then they could focus on what we were saying. It doesn't work for everybody, but it sure did help.
Right. So it wasn't just that you said, okay, go and be distracted whenever you want, and I'll be here waiting when you come back. What it sounds like you were doing was helping them ease their anxieties about I have to be here, or maybe they wanted to be there for this class, and yet at the same time they had sales calls coming in, other people pinging me, and all of those were critical to the business also. And you helped them see how they could do both at the same time. while focusing on one or the other.
Yeah. In the world today, and this is it's hard to keep someone's attention, and you'll see that not just in business, but just in marketing. How do you get somebody's attention? And it's and just to get it and keep it. Keeping 5 or 10 seconds is sometimes all you get. But it's hard. It's hard in the corporate world, that's for sure.
So as you're meeting someone for the first time, how do you suss out what the best way is to help them create their environment so that they can spend the time to focus on you?
You kind of give them the outline. Here's the plan for the day. Here's what we need you to do. Here's the key things that you need to take away from the day. And if you miss something, here's your resources to find it. Right. I think that was probably more important in some cases than the content I was training because, like you said, you lose people throughout the day. So teaching them how to find the information that you're covering, when this meeting or class is over, that was key to our success.
Is that something that you've just always done, or did you have an experience that led you to discover how well that would work?
It was just kind of learned. I certainly wasn't. You don't go into a role like that just being perfect, right? You learn over time and experiences. Teach you which is the best way to do this. And for me, it was kind of a unique role in that I was not only in front of the classroom often, but I was also in the field often. So I was able to support the messages or the technology that we were training, and I was able to support it, afterwards, which is kind of unique in a lot of organizations. A lot of times you just have a corporate trainer, and that's all they do is they train the products, and then it's up to somebody else to coach them through. And I had a pretty unique role at that time where I was able to do both the facilitation of the course, the content, and then provide follow up afterwards. It was impactful. It worked well.
I'd imagine each side of that fed into the other. That the training you did helps you understand how to support them in the field better, and what you learned debugging all the things that went wrong in the field made a big difference in helping you understand how to train the next batch of people that come through.
It does. It does. And the part that I didn't share earlier, but the part I think that made, at least for us when we were facilitating, is provide the why before you start training the content. Why is it important for them to learn this? Why is it important for them to understand? And maybe some of the impacts if they don't. And so I think that really helped solidify the reason why they were there. I'm for one, I don't like to go to trainings. I'm not I have a hard time paying attention myself. So I guess I could have empathy for those that were attending our courses.
I'm sure that helped you get in touch with those who didn't want to be there or didn't understand why they were there, and so it was hard for them to focus.
Yeah, it was, and being entertaining. You got to have a little fun. Right? I always figured every day I was going to have fun, or it wasn't worth coming. So I may I may not have been the most um, professional facilitator all the time, but I try to make sure that everybody, and it was a way for them to keep attention, right? Just make fun of yourself a little bit every once in a while, and be serious when you really need to be serious and focus on that, and just changing or adapting to that particular topic was important.
How did you find the balance with each new class of how much they're going to need you to show up as silly Todd versus professional Todd versus your best friend Todd versus I'm just here to teach you, you don't need to like me Todd, and all the other personas that I'm sure you brought in?
Yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, I probably hit all of those at different times. Um, you know, when you start losing your audience, I'm sure this is no different for comedians or anybody else that's performing. When you're facilitating, I consider it a performance, and when you started losing your audience, you had to recognize that, and rather than just going through the curriculum when you're having issues, and I mean even things such as temperature, right? The comfort of your with people in our classrooms. I, can I share a funny story? So we and I, if I have some previous classmates that are that hear this, they're going to go, "Dang it, Todd! I knew you would do something like this." But um, it was getting late in the afternoon, and we were in a classroom where the the event center was having a difficult time maintaining a constant temperature in the room. So people were either getting cold or getting hot. And, not everybody feels comfortable at the same temperature. So it was getting towards the end of the day, and it was getting a little bit warm in the classroom. So they asked me if I could help, and so my co-facilitator was up working, and I walked back and I walked around. And I could not find the staff to help adjust the temperature in the room. So I come back and say, and all I said is, "Boy, does that feel any better, guys?" We said, "Well, yeah, that's a lot better. I appreciate it." I didn't do a dang thing other than paint the picture that, hey, I tried to do something a little bit better, and I don't know if I really confessed that to him at the time, but it was a perception, it was a placebo effect, I guess, but it worked, got us through the day anyway.
That was really brilliant leadership there, Todd, that you were. A lot of people would come back and say, well, I looked everywhere. I couldn't find anybody to help you, so we just have to suffer. And instead, what you did is come back and you asked them how it felt now. And they invented for themselves a story that was better, whether it really was or not. That
Yeah, maybe it did change a little bit over the time, but it wasn't. Certainly wasn't my doing that particular one. But again, just have a little fun. Try to. I could have easily got called out on it, but we didn't have much of that time left in the class, so it worked out well.
and if you had gotten called out, I imagine you would have had some humorous remark of, yeah, I tried to slip one past you and it didn't work, did it? You guys are too smart for me. Maybe one of you should be up here teaching.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, you just gotta have fun. You might try to keep it entertaining, and there's some stuff, like I said, you have to be really really focused, and others you can be a little bit more entertaining to get people's attention.
That really exemplifies in the moment resilience and adaptability and even some ease and fluidity in the way that you are working with those students.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a good time, and I did it for a number of years, and it was something I really enjoyed, and it helped me in my leadership going beyond. So that was just one phase of my facilitation timeline, and went on to do other things. But that was a fun one.
How have you found that your experiences there inform the way you lead now?
So, I'm with Compass Carts. I'm doing shows and doing like sports shows and expos, and there's a time when you're at the show, you're on just like you are when you're in front of a classroom, and maintaining that energy when you don't feel like it, or your stomach's growling because you didn't get a chance to break for lunch that day, or whatever. It's having the ability to stay high energy, and a little different in that you're asking more questions than sharing information, but it's that same kind of presentation attitude. Um, it looks like we're having fun, and we are having fun. But I tell you, at the end of the day, we're exhausted.
I imagine. What helps you maintain that energy through the day?
Caffeine. No. No, probably a little bit of caffeine. Maybe at times a little bit too much, but I just it's fun for me, and I really enjoy it. And I enjoy being with people and learning about them and asking who they are, and what brought them to our booth, or in some cases, I'm flagging them down as they're walking by. Have you seen this? and and that just staying energetic like that. I've learned over the years, though, it's the more people I can have to help, give those of us in the booth a little downtime, just like my students in my classroom, that made a big difference. So being able to get out and walk around the show yourself or whatever, that made a big difference to go just step away. Yeah, taking a break inside the booth didn't really work.
When you're flagging someone down or they're coming over on their own, you have 5 or 10 seconds to engage them before they decide to move on to something else. How do you connect with someone in that short amount of time?
There's we've done a few things in the show where we'll have like our product will set up in different ways. We have physical product in our booth. We can demo how Compass Carts works with your vehicle or in your situation. And when somebody sees something and they go, "This is pretty cool," I'll just simply say, "And you haven't even seen the best part yet. You want to see the best part?" Well, that's hard to say no to that kind of question. So then you walk them over and you show a demo, and it doesn't matter which side of the booth. It's one they could be coming to this one and they think that's pretty cool, and then you say, "Well, hey, you want to see the best part?" And then you show them the other part. And it could be the other way. Maybe you start on the other one and you go, "Hey, do you want to see the best part?" So it gives you an opportunity to slow them down, let them experience our product and see what it does. And my perception of the best part is going to be different than theirs, right? They may have a different use in mind or a different purpose, or maybe somebody they're thinking about that could use the product. And so what my perception of the best part is it's just a perception. It's really what their best part is. That's when you got a good customer, good potential for a sale.
Yes, and even if what you showed them initially turns out to be their best part, you still kept them interested and engaged and have a little more into that conversation. So you have a little more info to keep that conversation going.
Yeah, and a lot of times when you're walking from one side of the booth, I mean, we're only talking 20 feet, but you can ask a question to find out a little more about them. So as you're telling them about your product, or where you hope they get excited about it, that's it's a way to engage, and that's just what we did in our technical side of training versus our training our products or our services that we sell today. Just keeping them engaged is the important part.
What have you most learned from doing these shows with po- possible customers that has informed or changed the way that you lead in the office?
Ooh, okay, that's a good question. I haven't really thought through that. I think the level of detail that I share with, for example, my designer or my engineer, phrasing my questions better when I'm asking, somebody that I'm working with. I think that's really helped with that. Asking clarifying questions. A customer might say, "Well, this, feels too big or feels too small," and then you could ask them why, and then they will tell you the purpose or what they're basing their question on. And I think carrying that over with my design team, with my engineers, with my marketing group, why do you feel, this is a good product or a good way to you know, market this, or what social media that you're using, and why do you feel that one's the best for this particular content? And I think that's helped a lot. Being willing and having questions rather than just saying, which I've done before, "No, I don't like that." Or it helps open up the conversations, and I think that makes a big difference when it comes to the success of whatever service or product we're trying to adjust.
What else are you doing to build cultures where people feel safe and empowered to bring their unique talents into everything that they do?
Well, I bring on my team because of their expertise, and I trust them, and I ask for their opinion. And when you do that, that helps build trust. That means they need to know that I trust them and that I'm counting on them. Um, so if something doesn't go right, they're more willing to help fix it, especially if it was their idea. But yeah, asking the right questions, showing that you care, that you value their opinions, I think makes a world of difference.
How do you show them that you value their opinions?
Tell them, "Hey, you're the expert here. I need your help on this." Or is there anything else I can do to help you find the information. Who can I connect you with? Maybe a peer or an associate or, anybody that if I can help them do their job better, I feel like it's a win-win. It's in my case is somewhat, I'm not going to say probably unique, but it's different than what it was when I was at Wells Fargo. So at Wells Fargo, I worked internally. I had a team that all worked within Wells Fargo. Today, I don't have that. Most of my team are hired as a contractor or hired for a service. And that's, when you're a small company, you can't put an attorney on your payroll, right? So you're relying on them and their expertise. And I lean on them a lot. I mean, even when it's not their expertise. So I may have, like my patent attorney, for example, reached out to my patent attorney and asked him questions about corporate contracts. And it's not an area of expertise for him, but he knows somebody that is. And working together as a even though he's not on my team necessarily, he really has been involved in helping the company be a success, and I think that's helpful.
How do you help all of these different people who aren't your direct W-2 employees integrate with each other and ensure that they're all marching in the same direction along with you? When we're working with contractors and vendors and all these service people outside of our company, it's so easy for them to go off in the directions that they know what's right for their particular thing, and then suddenly we're going in a million different directions, and integrating them all together, getting them to go in the direction that you want can be super challenging.
It is, and I was not very good at that to begin with. Um, I I trusted a lot, specifically on my engineers, and I take a lot of blame on this one myself in that I learned over time that they're not mind readers, and but I didn't understand that to start with. Just because my idea was a great idea, right? At least in my mind, it was an amazing idea, and I'm trying to tell, hey, this is all I needed to do. Just make it do this, and when they come back with something that wasn't like it, I'm like, geez, I mean, don't you understand what I'm trying to say? And well, obviously they didn't, right? So I learned I need to provide more detail, more why behind why I'm asking it, asking for this to happen. I prepare my presentations a lot more thoroughly now than I used to. So when I need a product change, I'll send video or a picture, especially if there's a language barrier. So some of my clients, English is not, or my contractors' English is not their first language. So um, providing that kind of information really has helped in moving a product along a lot faster. So I take a lot of that on me. And think about it this way, Michael. It's no different than ChatGPT or any of the AI systems today, right? It's only going to give you back the information that you put in. So if you want better results back, you got to give it better information to get those results back. And for me, I was not very good at that to start with. And it costs time, costs money, but it's something you learn. And you're not going to be an expert at everything all the way along. So it's pretty fun.
How do you know when you've hit that right balance between giving them enough information to execute on your vision without giving them so much direction that they're just executing your plan versus bringing in all of their unique genius that you hired them to bring?
Yeah, I think I've done that before. I think it's a pendulum swing, right? I think I've done that before. Um, what I've been doing differently today that I maybe provided too much information, so to just make it this way, or maybe I've given them the drawings or something that I drew without getting an expert opinion because yeah, it just seemed to make sense to me. Is to again back and ask their opinion. You know, is there a problem with the way I'm doing this? Or is there a concern with the material I'm using, or what other information do you need? Because this is the outcome, and I think if you share the outcome that you're looking for, along with the rest of your information, and give them the freedom to share their opinion, I think that's important. Before, when I wasn't doing that, when I wasn't giving them information, I had them. So I had them almost completely redesigning my product. So here's what I want. Here's my basics. Look at it. If there's a way to make an improvement, let's do it. But I didn't say don't change the basic concept. So there were like re-engineering stuff, and it's stuff that I had already tested in the past, and I knew through my experience that either it didn't work as well or it would require a lot of other changes. And so it's there's a balance, and I think you hit it on the head there, Michael, by asking that question. It's going to be a learned question. And I think the person you're working with is going to be different, right? Some of them are going to you're going to say, eye to eye. This is we're all thinking the same way, and others are thinking maybe on a different project that they did that's similar and trying to carry over that data as opposed to yours. And I've got a little bit of that going on right now with our CRM system, trying to figure out, do we have the best CRM system, and should we be looking at, different vendors, or what's going to be the best with our current systems, as well as, and I'm really excited about AI these days. So, how is this company leveraging AI in our CRM systems? Those kinds of questions. I think it's going to be good.
What heuristics do you have to know that you're providing enough level of detail in the outcomes you're requesting without providing too many?
You often don't know until you get it back, right? Um, I there's been times I've had to step back myself, and after being frustrated with the results I've gotten, and go, okay, why didn't I get these results, and what could I have done differently to help? And I think that's the piece that self realization that the fault should land back on me, um, is important. And I've had a situation too where I've done what I thought was all the right things. I've tried to explain it. I've done the outline, and it still didn't work, and we just had to separate. So there's potential you can get to that point as well. You hope it doesn't happen, but it's inevitable that somebody's in the wrong position, or you're asking somebody that doesn't, for some expertise that they just simply don't have. And, those are the times you'll have to course correct and find a new source.
When you are course correcting like that, how much are you trying to identify which parts of what you're asking to do might be a bad fit, and that you have some other part of your organization where they might be a perfect fit? And how much are you just saying, oh, this isn't working out, we're going to let you go and find someone else that's going to work out better?
I'm pretty small. I'm a pretty small organization, so I don't often get the opportunity to say, okay, I want this person in the organization to do that role. Um, Again, most of my team is contractors. Um, for me, again, this is probably more of a self realization. I put somebody, or ask somebody to do something in outside of their expertise, and it just we struggled, and we were getting results back that were taking me more time than what you know. I brought them on to save me time, and in the long run, it was costing me more time, and so we ended up stepping away. But it was a mutual. We talked about it. I it was an understanding, and it was something that I think it's because my past managers were so good, and they were so willing to open up and tell me what they saw with me that was good, areas I could use some improvement on, or how we didn't hit the mark on a certain project. having that feedback from those managers and the way they shared that with me, I think that's the reason I'm able to do what I do today. Um, really, I've had a really good team.
What is it that they did that helps you, that's really impacted you today?
Encouragement. I had some real good hands-on managers that really provided some encouragement, even when I could tell they were probably frustrated with me. Um, there was things I thought I was really, really good at, and when what I did wasn't up to their standards, I took it personally. Um, but they were patient and they were coaching and very good at asking questions. And I think that's what's made, again, I wasn't real good at that when I launched my own company, but when I self-reflect when things don't go well, I lean on my peers. In fact, it's not uncommon for me to call them out and ask them about a project that I'm working on and ask for some counseling. They're kind of a good group of mentors for me as well. Uh, Even though none of us work for the same company anymore, but they've been great. I'm really fortunate.
As you are working through for yourself how much to invest in this person who isn't your employee, they're a contractor of some sort, versus to help them grow into more of who you want them to be, how you want them to help you, versus they're not working out, you could just cut bait now, but then you have to go find someone else and bring them up to speed, and you have zero guarantee that they're going to be any better. They might even be worse. How are you making that determination?
Well, I had an experience just recently where we tried a few different things. I know it was outside of his expertise. Um, I had some faith. I trusted him, and and it really wasn't working. But we had a pretty good open dialogue. He was very open to feedback. He was willing to share that he didn't feel comfortable with some of the things I was asking for, and mostly because he didn't have the expertise there. Right? It was just outside what his experiences were, outside of his um, purview of his background, his education, maybe even. But he was open minded. He was willing to try, and we were pretty clear at the time. This is what we're going to try. And we pivoted. We pivoted a couple of different times. So that he couldn't help me with that, but could he help me with creating a list or creating a marketing list, for example, as one of the things I asked him to do. And those were some areas where he succeeded, and it worked out really well. But then you got to source the other stuff. So if that person doesn't do it, then you just got to find another one that does.
So it sounds like in this case, and maybe in every case, there's sort of a give and take that you walk down that road with them for a while. And if they're learning, skilling up fast enough, then you continue investing. And if they're not doing that as fast as you need, then you pivot to something that's more directly where you know they could help. And eventually you've done that and they're still not, you've gone through multiple pivots, it's still not working out. And so then that's when you separate from them and move on to someone else.
That's right. And I wonder if for me, that's probably easier to do as a small business than a corporation. Um, if you're the manager within a corporation and someone's not working out on your team, um, you may be a manager in, technology, or you're a manager in marketing, and you got somebody working for you in marketing, but they'd be better fit in technology. A lot of companies don't have it's they don't have the contacts or the way to coach somebody to move to another realm. And in being a small company, maybe I have more flexibility than some larger corporations. The crazy thing, when I was in the corporate world working with Wells, I worked in a number of different roles, and I've met people across business lines. And I think that's why I had such a long career there. Is going from my sales career to working in technology to working in management to everything from underwriting to compliance and all the different people I've met along the way. I think was the reason I was able to bounce around, if that's a fair term, between all my different roles. And I don't think everybody does that in the corporate world. You have to be willing to look and make friends outside of your normal 9 to 5. A lot of my contacts were after hours at different events that we went to, and that's where I made some of my longest or long-term relationships were, not just between the 9 and 5, but between 5 and 9. So doing those little extras in my career, I think made a big difference for me.
How much of this reaching outside of your default boundaries for connections is something that you do everywhere versus something you learned or discovered helped in the work environment?
It's I was probably pushed more than I sought that type of information. Now I'm a very social person, so going to corporate events, I was the one bouncing around asking people, talking to them. So that's just in my personality, and that's not in everybody's personality. So for me, it came natural. But even when I was doing well, the job I enjoyed some of the most at Wells Fargo was um, the corporate training role that we kind of started talking about. I really enjoyed that. I had a lot of fun, and I really learned a lot. But then, management pushed me to take on different roles, and I learned a lot as a result, and made mistakes. And at times, I was questioning whether or not I should have done that. Looking back, it was some of the best, you know, decisions I've made, and not all of them worked. I had a position that I moved to, and it quickly got eliminated within a year after moving there. So now I'm like, I got to go find something else. But as a result of moving there, I was able to move into different roles, and so being uncomfortable is okay. Um, it's not easy, but it's okay.
What has helped and is helping you live with that uncomfortableness?
Now I kind of have to, right? Um, there's a lot of as a small business, I wear many hats, and when I first launched the company, I was still working for Wells Fargo when I came up with the idea and started it, and spent time researching. It was my Michael. What do they call that? Your side gig. It was my side gig, so to speak. And when I left Wells and went at this full time, I really thought I was in good shape, and I continue to learn something new and get uncomfortable. You know, sometimes asking questions I'm afraid to hear the answer to. Or I've made a decision on information I didn't have, on information I thought was correct, and it wasn't. So, yeah, as an entrepreneur, you have to be comfortable living uncomfortably, and that was a learned experience for me. Probably the one thing that probably helped me, Michael, from a financial standpoint, is I was in sales, commission sales before I was an entrepreneur. Um, so I knew I had to perform in order to get paid, and I think that's um, a key aspect to being an entrepreneur, in that you have to perform in order to get paid, or if you don't perform, you're not going to have a paycheck. I think that level of stress or something to drive you is important, and not everybody has that.
That is definitely true. And that is also just fine. You've had experience, Todd, of customizing the way you work to the people you're with in big corporate, in big organizations, and smaller trading and one-on-one situations. Now you're doing that in a small business, working with a lot of people who contract with you, aren't direct employees. What have you found holds constant across that full spectrum of experiences in the business value of doing all the work to do this work?
Um, I mean, I'm kind of sounding like a broken record here, but asking questions, getting to know people as people is probably the most consistent, most helpful thing, whether you're in a role within, a major organization or for like myself as a small business entrepreneur. Um, people say I'm not good at sales. And I heard that all the time, even in some cases when I was training salespeople. Um, but we would have, fulfillment partners that would handle all the back end part of it. And they would say, yeah, I'm glad you guys do what you do because, I could never be good in sales. And I'm thinking, you're in sales all the time. You're selling, the reason why we should approve a loan or why we shouldn't approve a loan, or you're selling, why it's important for someone to, present their application in this manner with this amount of detail, so it's easier for us to make a decision and move back. So you're always selling, even when you're not in sales. Um, and just, understanding that I think is an important. And for me, that's the same way in small business. As an entrepreneur, I'm selling people on why they should work with me, or I get a lot of calls with people calling to sell me stuff now, and being the buyer on the side, whether it's in marketing or systems or shipping products. I never knew there were so many shipping companies out there, Michael. Holy cow! But yeah, what a competitive world that is. But you know, you're in sales every day. You're in sales, and maybe even sales with your spouse, right? I want to do something this evening, or this is why you should let me go out with my buddies, or you're whatever you do, you're in sales. So understanding how to work with people, I think is key, even when you don't think you're a salesperson, but you truly are. My wife is good. She can sell with just her eyes. She can look, if I see I said something or did something goofy, and I see her, the way she looks at me, I'll go, oh yeah. She doesn't have to be in sales for me to understand. She's selling me that this is not a good idea.
Is there anything else that we haven't talked about yet today on that you found useful for helping people find their way through all of the change, uncertainty, and overwhelm that life seems to be full of these days?
I thought of something very similar to that the other day. Um, with Compass Carts, we actually produce a product. It's manufactured. It's made out of aluminum and steel, and it's completely different from the finance business that I was just in. Right, we didn't manufacture a physical product like that. But back when I was in college, I took a part-time job. It was a full-time job while I was going to college. So it was a second shift factory position where we were actually making parts. And so I was working on a machine. We were bending metal, we were shaping metal, um, for me, Michael, it was one of the most monotonous jobs. I only lasted about 3 months, and the company, I was there for summer help. And when the summer was over, they didn't need me anymore. So I got let go. Um, I may have been the only one happy on that particular day because I didn't want to be there. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I wanted to be in sales. I wanted to be in marketing. I wanted to be in business. I didn't want to be in a factory. But that experience has carried over so well when I became an entrepreneur and came up with an idea and learned how the process to make a product and the people we had to work with and the steps that it has to go through, and to really understand that process has been invaluable today. So maybe it wasn't something I really enjoyed at the time, but you just never know what experiences you bring that can carry over into your new world, so to speak, or your new business. Um, and I think you can carry that over even in from a small business, even in our corporate world. I spent a lot of time in sales, but then when I was training underwriters who weren't necessarily salespeople, how to sell what documents they needed or steps they needed to the salespeople. It was something very transferable, and you could explain that. And so sometimes, taking a detour and learning something you didn't even need to know or didn't think you needed to know, you never know how that'll translate. And if we got a couple minutes, I'll share one more really cool one with you. Yeah, so this one is my brother-in-law worked for General Mills, so food manufacturing, of course. And I learned this lesson from him many, many years ago. But one of the things they wanted to do is speed up the amount of time and energy and manpower it took to go from cereal brand to cereal brand. So you have, one day you're making Cheerios, the next day you're making Wheaties, right? And when he was looking at this, they were taking as much as a day to go from one product line to another because there was a big process to do that. So he went and got a contract with NASCAR and studied how the pit crews worked to change tires and what their expertises were. And he brought that back to General Mills to teach, and he ended up developing a team that was basically their pit crew, so to speak, that helped them change cereal lines faster. Saved them millions of dollars as a result. But you would never think that, a food company could learn something from NASCAR. But sometimes you got to look outside of your purview. What could you learn from this experience that would help you in your current role or your current company or your situation? And it's amazing what you can learn. For me, I looked at the airline industry and how they manufactured airplanes in order to learn how to make my product strong and light. So just a way that I looked outside of what we do to gain some insight on how you could do something a little bit better. So that was pretty cool.
I love those examples, Todd. This is exactly why I have such a wide variety of people on my podcast. Because we never know what someone who just takes for granted in their day-to-day is going to be exactly the insight that totally transforms the way that we work. For people who would like to learn more about Compass Carts or talk with you more about your experiences and the way that you lead your diverse team, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, they can email me direct. It's toddh@compasscarts.com. You'll find, obviously, compasscarts.com is a good source of information to learn a little bit more about Compass Carts and who we are. And I'm always open to advice. So if someone sees something on our website or engineering that could be improved, I love feedback. So don't be afraid to share. And if someone has some questions about my experiences or how I did what I did, or a good example, Michael, is somebody maybe thinking about inventing their own product or coming up with an idea. I'm stealing this from somebody else, but they shared, if you ever think, wouldn't it be good if, you might have a new idea and worth exploring. And if someone needs some help, what are the next steps? Yeah, reach out to me. I'd be glad to help.
Appreciate that, Todd. Thank you so much. And we'll have those links in our show notes. What would you like to leave our audience with today?
The thing I think would be important for somebody that's thinking about starting their own business is start before you know everything, because you'll never know everything. Things change too fast, and but you can't get going unless you start. I think it was Walt Disney. I don't have it on my computer anymore. Said the way to get things going is to stop talking about it and start doing. So if you're thinking about that, and that could be internal in a large business too, but I think about it from an entrepreneur standpoint. You just got to start. I think that's the key part.
That is definitely a key. Thank you so much for joining us.
Michael, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for the great questions. It's been a lot of fun.
It has. And audience, thank you for joining us today. Todd and I would love to know, what are you going to stop thinking about and what are you starting to do instead? Thanks and have a great day.